In the early 80s, I saw a lot of death. I lived in San Francisco through the AIDS crisis, and I saw hundreds of people pass away from that disease. I knew people who had lost entire circles of friends. I remember one in particular. I was at a friend's house, and his roommate was an older man, probably in his 60s at the time. And he was friends with me and the people that were hanging out there at the house that night. We were all going to go out together. And so we were trying to talk him into going out, and he would just leave our company and go into his room and close the door. And so as everybody was leaving, I wanted to go reach out to him. And he opened the door to his room, and I went and I sat down and I asked him, I said, Mike, I said, we've been trying for a while to get you to go out and have some fun, I said, but you always just stay here in your room. And I just wanted you to know it'd be really great if you came. And the words that he spoke to me that night were heartbreaking. And here, even this many years later, they still touch me. Because he took my hand and he said to me, Vance, which was my name at the time. He says, Vance, I have buried over 30 of my friends in the last 5 years. He said, I'm the last one standing. All of my friends are dead. He says, I'm 60 years old. I don't have the energy to go out and start over again, to make a whole new circle of friends. I'm not unhappy. I'm not sad. I've just decided to be alone. I was heartbroken by that, and death has always been a troubling thing to try and comfort people in. As a Swami, lots of people come to their religious leaders or spiritual monks or whatever for consolation, and it always feels so cheap to me to say anything to them. And there's a story from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna where Ramakrishna, the master, is confronted with somebody who has lost their son that very same day. Mani Mohan loses his son, who was a very promising son, a very nice, growing up child. And so it says, a promising son of Mani Mohan Malik of Sundurapati, Calcutta, died. No sooner had he performed the ceremonies connected with that cremation than Mani Mohan came to the master, looking for comfort. The master was his teacher. So saluting the master, he sat with a heavy heart in a corner of the room. He saw many inquiring devotees, seekers of truth, men and women sitting in the room, and the master was talking to them on various spiritual topics. He had sat for some short time when the master's eyes happened to fall on him, and with a nod of his head he asked him, Well, why do you look so sad today? In a choked voice, Mani Mohan answered, My son has died today. Seeing his haggard appearance, hearing his choked voice, everyone in the room was dumbfounded and sat speechless. Everyone felt that any word of consolation could not assuage the deep pain and agony raging in his heart. Nevertheless, they began to console him in words such as, Oh, this is the way of the world. Everyone must die someday. Whatever has happened cannot be undone by shedding tears 1,000 times. He's in heaven now. He's in a better place. All of these phrases that we use to comfort people. Therefore, give up grief and have patience. And it's an interesting situation in the room because the master hasn't said anything. The master is sitting there quietly, and everybody in the room was sitting there quietly, wanting to say something but not knowing what to say. And then in their discomfort in the silence, they begin offering these little trinkets, of things that we say to people who have lost family, friends, lovers to death. And it doesn't placate his grief at all. he doesn't feel any better. And so Ramakrishna says, man has been consoling men and women struck with grief from the beginning of creation with these words. But alas, how few are the hearts that are thereby consoled, and how can they be? It is only when these three things, our minds, our words, and our actions, are inspired by the same feeling, that our words can touch others' hearts and raise similar waves of feeling there. So the Master is saying, unless there's this deep ability to connect with a person, to feel their pain, unless there's a deep integrity, a complete absence of hypocrisy in us, that we can't reach that level of support for these people, that there will be an insincerity to it, there'll be a shallowness to it, and that's what makes us not want to say something to begin with. And really, I've found over the years, the best way to comfort somebody is to be with them. Don't worry about saying anything. Don't worry about changing their mood or their state of being. They're suffering. They've lost someone. It's going to take some time. And you just sitting with them, willing to share those feelings with them, willing to hold their hand or sit quietly next to them in patience, that's the best support that you can give to somebody. So let's come back to the Master, because he still hasn't said anything to Mani Mohan. But he goes on and says, as he was listening to the words of this old man, the Master gradually passed into ecstasy, a state of divine semi-consciousness. Suddenly, with the pose and energy of a wrestler, he struck his left arm just below the shoulder with the palm of his right hand, stood up and began singing with an unprecedented vigor, "O man, prepare yourself for battle. There, see death entering your house in battle array. Ride on the chariot of great virtue. Harness it the two horses of devotion and spiritual practice. Stretch up the bow of knowledge and set the unfailing arrow of the love of God." So he just really, with vigor, stands up, and instead of giving these placating little, sweet nothings that we collect to try and comfort each other in an intense situation like this, he stands up and challenges Mani Mohan. Yes, death is at your door. Stand up. Stand up and face it. This is the reality of life. And he tells him how. He says, see, death is everywhere, in battle array, visiting every home on the planet, constantly. See death entering your house. Ride on the chariot of your great virtue. Stand in the place of knowing what's right, knowing the truth about this life, that we have never been promised an eternity on this planet. He says, ride on this chariot of great virtue. Remember your values. Remember your inner strength. Remember that you are ever free, ever pure, and ever loved of God. And he says, harness your chariot to the two horses of devotion and spiritual practice. That truth, that practice that does that alignment with the inside for us, that does align our thoughts, our actions, and our words in a great and beautiful level of integrity. He says, stretch out the bow of knowledge, the knowledge that all things pass in this world, that the self, the soul within is the only thing immortal, that unchanging sense of I that has been the same for you through your whole life, that unmanifest beloved of the divine, that is the one true reality, an ever perfect love, unconditioned, and ever deep knowledge and wisdom in life. Remember these things, stretch out the bow of knowledge, and set the unfailing arrow of the love of God, the ideal love, a love of perfection, not a mercantile love that's an exchange. You give me this, I'll give you that, but a love without conditions and without limit. And in this, we find the best way to comfort someone. Sit with them in silence until you feel an inward devotion or an inward inspiration to say something powerful and strong for them. But if not, to be content to sit in silence next to a friend who has lost something very important, and to feel and share that loss with them, and simply give them your company, your love, your wisdom, your shoulder.